I feel like if I have any whimsy, most of it just comes from all of my characters being like sarcastic assholes at their core. And that is mostly because my like foundational piece of media was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Girl.
Yes. Like
we could do a whole hour on Buffy herself.
And I would. That is like in the bedrock of my soul.
Same.
It's Buffy all the way down.
Come sit with us while we talk horror. Welcome to Talking Horror. I'm Rachel Red, and I love to read, especially horror thriller and the stories that explore the darker side of humanity. On this show, I interview authors about their books, their process, and why we're so drawn to stories that make us want to sleep with the lights on. Today, I'm joined by New York Times bestselling author Hannah Whitten, known for books like For the Wolf and The Foxglove King. She is best known for her dark, lush, emotionally rich fantasy where romance, power, and death are all tangled together and nothing comes for free. Her stories have lived at the intersection of fantasy and romance, but now, for the first time, Hannah is taking readers into the belly of the beast itself with her debut horror novel set to come out this summer. And trust me, you're going to want to sink your teeth into this. But be warned, it will bite back. I'm so excited, so let's jump into it. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you on here. This is so fun.
Yes.
I think you're my first guest who isn't like very strictly horror thriller. Like you've kind of dabbled in some fantasy romance before. And so it's like really fun to have a different perspective. So it's going to be such a good conversation.
I'm so excited.
I know, me too. All right. So if listeners who know your work are watching this, or to the listeners who don't know your work and are watching this, they might be asking, doesn't she do primarily romantasy? And why is she on a podcast that's basically about horror? But admittedly, you are a horror fan and have been. It's one of your favorite genres, correct? So tell how your horror lore started.
Ooh, so I was a spooky little kid. But I was a spooky little kid that was raised like very evangelical in the South, so I had to like keep it on the DL.
Yeah, 100%. That's relatable.
So, yes. So I was like checking Goosebumps out of the school library and just leaving it in my desk at school because I wasn't allowed to have those books. So I wouldn't bring them home. But I was reading them from the moment I could get my dirty little paws on them. And even, like the stuff I was allowed to read, like Saddle Club and things like that, would occasionally have like a spooky one that was like a mystery or like there's a ghost or whatever. And so I would always grab those first. I had like a set of the Nancy Drew books, like the old school ones, and I read all the ones that seemed like they could even possibly have something haunted in it first. So I was always seeking that out. I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies until I was like out of my parents' house. So I didn't really watch those until I was in like college. But scary books I've been reading since I was in single digits. And that's just continued. That's always been something that I really love. I don't really know why. I like being spooked.
No. I mean, all I do is read horror. And why?
Yeah.
Still trying to figure it out, kind of. But I think that there's like a real natural draw, especially as a young person, and you're kind of defining who you are and trying to figure out your identity, to the disturbing and to the darker stories that are kind of dealing with topics that feel relatable and real and genuine, or maybe even a little bit like, oh, at least my life's not like that. That kind of give you a little bit of an escape.
Yes,
so
100%.
I think that I've said this many times on the show, but I think everybody is probably a horror reader. Deep down, they just maybe don't know, or they don't define horror the same as everybody else.
Yes.
Because I would
it is
say
a really like fluid, and there's so many different like subgenres and stuff.
So many.
Yeah. I feel like everybody can find something.
Yes. And if you think about the rise of like dark fantasy or dark romance, or even like dystopian, like YA dystopian. I mean, even like with Twilight, which featured vampires, like those are all horror tropes. Like they're
Yeah.
not straying away from that. We just label it as something else. And so people are like, oh, I don't read
Yeah.
horror. I read
It's
dark
like
fantasy.
you
And you're
just
like,
twist you twist the knob just a hair and you can
100%.
completely change like the perspective and the genre on something. And it's really
Yeah.
it has so much to do with reader expectation too, as far as like if you go into a dark fantasy not necessarily expecting like this is going to scare me, even whenever you read something that maybe if you were like prepped because you knew it was horror and you thought it was going to scare you, you react to it differently because of the way the expectations are set up.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, you obviously have like traditional horror stuff.
Yes.
You know, like no one's questioning whether or not Stephen King writes in horror, but
Yeah.
though he doesn't only write in horror,
Yeah.
though it is interesting to see what people label as horror and not. So you have been reading horror for a long time. You're a spooky kid. I'm assuming you're a big Halloween fan, like the holiday.
Big Halloween fan. We got the best house on the block for Halloween.
Yes. Do you give out the full-size candy bars?
We don't do the full-size candy bars, but I get like the vintage Goosebumps in lots off of eBay.
Oh, fuck.
We'll hand those out.
That is amazing.
With the candy. There's obviously still candy. But
yes, of course, because it's all about the candy. That's like my kid's favorite holiday because of the candy. There was like different houses in our neighborhoods that gave out the full-size candy bars, and it would be like a race. You'd be like counting down, right? For like 6:30 after dinner and everyone's going out, and you would just see us like running to the houses because once they were out, they were out. And you're like, we got to get those full-size candy bars first.
Yes, man, we have to be first in line.
I know. My best friend's husband is really proud because he is now the house with the full-size candy bars. And he like, it's basically on his like LinkedIn. It's like on his resume
As it should be, honestly.
He wants everyone to know.
I would give someone a job that handed out full-size candy bars.
Yeah, exactly.
Before anybody else, really.
You'd be like, that's a green flag. That's a green flag.
That's a green flag to me.
All right. So you love to, do you still read a lot of horror, like as an adult?
It's pretty much the genre that I read.
I
kind of like ping pong back and forth between reading horror and reading romance. And recently lit fic, I've gotten into like lit fic, which was never something that I'd necessarily picked up before. But yeah, the past couple years, especially like the weird girl lit fic stuff, very into that. I'll really read anything, but horror is definitely like if I go to the bookstore, that's the first section I go to. Like I want to see what we're working with.
Yeah, 100%. And it's never big enough, to be fair.
Never. I always get so excited whenever I go into a bookstore and they have like a legitimate horror section that's not just like kind of shoved in with general fiction or the thrillers. Like, have a horror section, please.
Please. Yes, bookstores everywhere. So let's jump into kind of your writing journey. Starting at the beginning, like every good story should. I read that you've basically been doodling and writing stories since you could hold a pen, correct?
Yeah, I have.
So it goes way back. The love is deep.
It goes way back. Yeah. I was always such a huge reader that it really felt like kind of a natural step to try and write my own stories. And it was always just for me. Like it was just a fun thing that I did. And most of them were essentially like fan fiction with the serial numbers filed off. Like I was writing myself into, you know, a love triangle with Aragorn and Legolas very early. That sort of thing. Yeah, so it was just kind of writing, like, if I had a desire to read a particular kind of story and I couldn't necessarily find something that was scratching that itch, I was like, okay, well, then I'll just write it because then it's kind of like reading it and I could do whatever I want. And I had, like, the vague notion as a kid that, like, this is a job that people do and they write these stories and that's, like, what they do with their lives. And I was like, that would be a cool thing to do, but I have no, like, concrete knowledge of how one does that or how any of that works. So it wasn't, like, I never really had a moment as a kid that was like, I'm going to be an author because it was just, like, I write for fun. And if I think that it's good, I'll, like, make my friends read it. And that was kind of about as far as it went. And then, you know, I went to college, I got a full-time job, I got married, didn't have a whole lot of time for writing. It was still something that, like, if the muse was upon me, I might sit down and do something just as, like, a hobby. But I wasn't necessarily taking it seriously. And it wasn't until I had my daughter, our first kid, that I had the time to take it seriously, which is kind of a weird thing to say because, you know, having a kid is supposed to be the thing that, like, takes all of your time away.
Sure, yeah.
But I had dropped back to working part-time whenever I had her, and I was working from home. because we couldn't afford full-time childcare.
Right? Because honestly, who can?
Who can? None of us. So I was just kind of like found myself in my house with this tiny kid. Postpartum depression hit me like a freight train, and I didn't really know what I was doing or who I was outside of taking care of my kid. And so because writing had been something that was such a comfort for me as a kid, that was kind of what turned me back to it. So I started writing what became For the Wolf in 2016, so 10 years ago now. I just had that realization earlier this week, and it was
Crazy.
wild.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
I was like, oh my God, that's been a decade.
Yeah.
So I started writing it. I had no idea how to like actually write a book because I'd never really finished one before. Like I'd started things that I thought would become book-length projects, and just kind of they petered out, and I was like, okay, well, so much for that.
Yeah.
But I started writing this one when my daughter was napping, and I had like no thoughts of publication or of trying to make it anything other than just, it was an escape. It was something that was just for me. It was a way to kind of turn the anxiety off in my brain for a little while. And I plowed through that sucker. I wrote the first draft of that book in like 2 months, I think, which for me at the time was very fast. Very fast.
That's very fast now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Well, not knowing what you're doing really kind of helps with the speed. Because you aren't like second guessing yourself at all. You're just plowing through it. I had no plan. It was literally just you sit down and you start typing. You're like, what will I write today? Will it go with what came before? Probably not. It was legitimately just like me having a fun time. And it wasn't until I finished it and was kind of rereading it, because, I had written it because I wanted to read something that was like that. So the present to myself was like, okay, now it's written and I get to read it. So like, as I was reading it, I was like, I feel like this could be good. I feel like this could be a real book. So I went on the Google and Googled like, how does one make a book? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And it led me to Twitter, unfortunately. But that's kind of back when that existed, was where I learned about like querying and traditional publishing versus self-publishing, and like how you make a book. So in my very naive confidence, I started sending out queries on that first draft. Don't do that, writers out there who might be listening. All of them were rejected with good reason. And I met Erin Craig on Twitter, who has written House of Salt and Sorrows, our strange duet coming out. We all know and love Erin.
Yes.
She and I were both in the query trenches at the same time, and we were both querying they were fairy tale retellings. And so we kind of connected through that. She was like, well, send me your draft and I'll see what you have. So I sent it to her. Literally all that had been done to this draft was a spell check. Like it was hot off the press. And she didn't run screaming from it, which eternally grateful to her for that. And she wrote me my first edit letter, essentially. I had no experience with such a thing, because I thought that, like, you authors, they're good at the words, and so they just write the words and they make sure everything is spelled correctly, and they might change around a couple sentences to make them sound good, and then it's book, it's book and it's done. That's not how it goes.
What?
Yeah, what? There's a lot more happening than that.
You heard it here first, people.
You heard it here first. Yeah, so she wrote me an edit letter, essentially, and it was like, yeah, and you just, you go back in and you edit it. And it's like, oh, you change things? You change things after you write them the first time? Yes, apparently. Many times, in fact, which was the lesson that I went on to learn, because I rewrote For the Wolf, like, front to back from the ground up at least 4 times.
Wow.
I did it once with Erin's edit letter. I did it once, the real, like, old school book Twitter people will know, I was in Pitch Wars, and so I rewrote it once then. Yeah.
Yes.
Blast from the past.
Oh, I know.
Blast from the
Sad.
yeah.
Sad.
So much has been taken from us.
So much.
But yeah, so I rewrote it again there. I rewrote it again whenever I finally signed with my agent, in, I think it was 2018 that I signed with her. Rewrote it again for her. And then there was countless little, like, tweaky things in between where you aren't rewriting the entire book. You're just going in and you're changing one element, or you're switching some scenes around, or you're trying to bring out some character stuff more clearly. Yeah. So this was very long-winded, but
no, this is great because I have so many questions and you just answered all of them.
Yeah, that's how I got
Thanks for coming on the show.
Into this. You're so welcome. That's how I got into this, and it wasn't one of those stories that you hear from people where it's like, I wrote the book and I got an agent in 2 weeks and then it sold overnight in like a 6-figure auction or whatever. It was not like that at all. I rewrote the book so many times. I queried kind of beyond the point in which conventional wisdom would tell you, like, it is time to do a new book. I was like, no, but this book, I feel really strongly about this book. And I do think that it's because of like the circumstances under which I started writing it. It just felt very, very important to me, and it still does. There's so much that I would do differently were I to write that book today, just because I've learned so much, but it's still very, very near and dear to me. And then, after I got my agent, the submission process and finding a publisher for it was fraught. And that was like another 2-year thing where it kept going to acquisitions meetings. And we actually originally pitched it as YA. It was back whenever we all thought that NA was kind of going to be like more of a thing than it was. So I had written it. Yeah, I'd written it NA, been told, hey, that's not really happening. You probably want to age it down to YA. And I was like, okay. So I did that. Got my agent with the YA version of the manuscript. We took it out on submission, and it kept getting like right to the finish line and then wouldn't get over it. And the feedback was always like, this feels too old. This isn't like paced the way that we need a YA fantasy to be paced for this market and things like that.
Right.
Which it wasn't, because it shouldn't have been a YA book.
Yeah. How interesting.
That is so cool. that was very valid feedback. So I fully expected my agent to tell me like, hey, this one's kind of dead. Let's focus on the next thing. But she was like, how would you feel about revising it to be adult? And I was like, I would feel great about that. And once we did that and the story had more room to breathe, more room to do the things that I wanted it to do, I didn't kind of feel like I was trying to like work at a breakneck pace to fit in with the YA market at the time. Once we went out with it as an adult submission, it sold pretty quickly. And so that was that book.
That was the start.
That was the start. That's why I'm still here. That was a duology. That did, I think it did better than any of us anticipated it doing. It was kind of a sleeper agent.
Well, you had so much confidence in it as a storyteller, obviously, probably because of what it meant to you, the time you wrote it in your life, like you already mentioned.
Yeah.
You had to have known, probably deep down, had some kind of inclination, like, this is going to be my first. I think there's like a really interesting, relationship with a debut author around the kind of book they put out first, because you only get your first book once. And I do think there is a sense of like, I need to make sure, or I want to make sure that I think the genuine intention is that this book communicates the kind of writer I hope to be. Like, it's my first splash. So it can't just be anything. You want it to be not the best book you've ever written, obviously, because everyone evolves, but you want it to make a statement. And you want it to be something you're really, really proud of and you really love, and it doesn't feel like you settled or you changed for the market, though it does sound like you aged it up, but you wanted it to be that way to begin with. So it's like a really interesting, like, to hear your process. So it sounds like, was it 4 years from starting that book to having it published? Is that about the time frame?
It was 5, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Math is not my strong point. That's why I do the words. But I started writing it in 2016 and it published in 2021.
Crazy.
Yeah, like a 5-year process.
Okay, so many questions from that story that I just loved so much. We do surely have, I know for sure that we have aspiring writers who listen to this show. So for those writers out there, first of all, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've come across when talking to authors is just finishing the first book, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, there is a lot of natural creativity and ideas and inspiration, and writing is often viewed as this very romantic, kind of artistic. I sit in my office with my candles and my low lighting and my instrumental music, and I just create, and I am amazing, right? Idea. And then when you actually sit down to do the work, you're like, fuck. This is a lot of work.
It don't look like that.
It's so hard. And actually finishing a book is like the first triumph because a lot of writers never finish. So the fact that you did, and then, so it's not just like, oh, I finally finished a book and then I got published. It's like, yes, you did finally finish a book, but then you rewrote it like 10 times.
Yeah.
And what kind of advice, or I guess, you know, what were your tips and tricks on staying motivated and staying like in the slog of being like, this is the book I really want? And at any point where you're like, maybe I should just give it up and write something else. Like maybe the universe is telling me this is not the one.
Yes, to both of those things. So, treated For the Wolf like it was a fandom that I was in. I was just so into the setting and the characters and the romance and everything that I was wanting to do with it. I was so into it that it was fun for me to work on. Like it never necessarily felt like a slog just because it was like, oh, I get to spend some time in this world some more. Like that's amazing. Part was exciting to me. Yeah. And I really think that that's like the best thing that you can do for yourself is just to be your own target audience and to be as self-indulgent as you want to be.
Yeah.
Because, the reason that I love that book so much is just because I shoved everything that I liked reading into it, including a lot of like horror-y moments in that book. Yeah, which is kind of like why going into horror feels less like a huge genre change to me and more like just kind of like sidestepping and going a little bit further on things that I include in my books anyway. Yeah, so like I put horror in it, I put romance in it, I put the woods. There was grumpy characters, and I had such a good time working on it that I won't say it never felt like a slog because it always feels like a slog sometimes. And I can still remember like particular scenes that every time I would get to them in a rewrite or a revision, I'd be like, oh my God, I have to do this again. This one always takes me forever. Yeah. But because I enjoyed being in that world so much, it was never a chore. Even when it was hard, it didn't feel like a chore. So be as self-indulgent as you want to be. And you might have to take some of it out eventually, but that's okay.
In the beginning, I've heard, I don't know if it might have been Brandon Sanderson, but I shouldn't say that because then I'll misquote it and Brandon Sanderson fans will be like, he never said that. But he should say it if he hasn't. But I'm somebody who is a writer, not me, said, I write for myself first. And then, and then I hand it over to my editor. And once we start editing, it becomes for the reader. And I just love the idea of that kind of self-expression. I don't think that's true of all writers. But it sounds like you identify with the idea of like, this is for me first. This story is for me. And then one day it'll be for the reader. But right now it's for me.
Yeah.
Do you still write that way?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of what my process is at this point, because it's like, if I'm not having a good time, what are we even doing here? Because I'm the one that has to spend 1 million hours in it, working on it, and then, talking about it and promoting it and answering questions about it. And it always has to be something that I'm really, really into in order for me to give my best in all of those areas.
Yeah. Did you know going into For the Wolf that it was going to be a duology? Was that the plan? Okay.
It wasn't a plan whenever I wrote the very first draft, but by the time I had rewritten it for the third time, I was like, oh, this will be a duology now.
I've got more to say.
I have more to say. Back by unpopular demand, me.
Yeah. Was it titled For the Wolf? And how much of the original story stayed that story when you pitched it? Or would you say the initial pitch, the one you finished and sent off, to Pitch Wars is starkly different from what For the Wolf is that we have as readers?
So every single word in it is different, but the bones of the story stayed pretty much the same.
Okay.
From the beginning. And that is because it was such kind of a folkloric kind of piece where we're taking a lot of fairy tale tropes and just kind of using them in different ways or in the same way. Because the broad strokes were always the same, but the ways that we got there and a lot of the details completely changed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But like motivations, characters, kind of.
Yeah, the motivations
the
and the
world building.
characters. Yeah. The world building changed some whenever I realized that it needed to be a duology, but not like super drastically because the pieces were already there. It was just like rearranging them in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the characters for sure all stayed pretty much who they were. It was just me figuring out better ways to convey who they were.
That's so interesting. All right. So you kind of mentioned already that you didn't kind of know that this book was going to do as well as it did, but you really believed in it. Because when you look this book up online, it still has the tag TikTok sensation. And I think this is a really interesting piece in fiction that is so different and did not exist 5 years ago.
No.
This idea that, you go into a Barnes & Noble now and you have like a TikTok book recommendation table.
Yeah.
And my story is so closely aligned with TikTok because, I was a avid reader for years, and then very similar to a lot of people, didn't read, had a job, had some kids, grew up, became old. And then COVID happened, and all of us were like, well, now we're stuck at home. What are we going to do? And started reading again with a very popular smutty fairy series that everybody knows. Yes. And transitioned into my romantasy journey, into fantasy, into sci-fi, into horror. And now that's where I live.
I love that journey for you.
It is my favorite journey for me as well. Thank you. But TikTok was the reason for that. Like, there was no book clubs. There was no, TikTok was the places where we were going to, find out about new books that were coming out, because it was just such a weird time.
Yeah.
So but then of course, social media is also horrific. So as a creator, as you know, it's what's the dichotomy or the duality of having to be online, and having a TikTok quote unquote sensation placed on your book, and being grateful for that, because surely it helped promote the book and helped with sales and it helped get the word out. But then dealing with the trolls and I guess the question here is, do you avoid social media? Do you engage with it? Do you how do you balance that?
I don't do TikTok. I scrolled for a while and tried to teach my algorithm that no, I can't read. I don't need to see any reader stuff, just because it's I don't need to be there,
Yeah, sure.
But I don't use it now, mostly just in interest of time. And I'm a doom scroller at heart, and there's so much doom.
There really is.
Yeah, that I find myself getting paralyzed very quickly, and that's not good for anybody. You can't do any good when you're paralyzed. So I don't TikTok. I have an Instagram. I try to be pretty active, posting on it and stuff. I'm millennial through and through, so I was more familiar with Instagram. What's funny is that whenever Wolf came out, I didn't really know what TikTok was. It was
it was new.
It was
right?
new, and I wasn't on it. And I didn't really know anybody that was on it. So once they told me that it was trending on TikTok or forever, I was like, cool, is that good? It sounds good. I hope it's good. Yeah. So that was cool. It was cool that it had kind of one of those little mini viral moments that I think yeah, it definitely helped it out a lot.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Did a huge
that's
thing
where
for it.
That's where I heard about you, was through TikTok for the Wolf. I was like, oh, cool. Awesome cover. Red writing. Here we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. Yeah. So I didn't know anything about it, and then was just like, oh, cool. This is a whole thing now. It's even more of a thing now. So I try, as far as trolls and stuff, I don't really encounter a whole lot of that. I don't go looking for stuff. It's unless somebody tags me, I'm not going to see it. I have no idea what's going on in the wider world of social media ever.
I feel like that's healthy.
It's healthy. It's healthy in some ways, and in some ways it's stuff just comes out of nowhere and you're like, how? Yeah. So I try to let it live in my little bubble, I guess, and not it's hard not to think about it at all, just because it is such a huge part of how books get into the hands of readers now.
Yeah.
But I also know that so much of it is down to just like timing and luck. And there's not really anything that I can accomplish by being there. Like TikTok is going to do its thing regardless of if I'm there or not. And if I'm lucky enough that something goes viral, then cool, that's great. But me being part of it isn't going to like make or break that. Yeah, so I'm glad that it's there. And we just kind of it's like a spider in your house where you're like, I'm glad that you're here because you're ecologically important. But I'm gonna let you do your thing over there, and I'll do my thing over here.
Yeah. And if you get close to me, then I will have to remove you.
Yes.
You know,
I will have to take it off my phone if I start to get super anxious.
Yeah. If you bite me, I'm sorry. You should not. I will bite you back. To be fair, we interrupt this programming to bring you a message from our sponsors, which is nobody. It's just me, Rachel Red. Really quickly, Talking Horror is a brand new podcast you've stumbled upon, and I would so appreciate your subscription, your likes, your comments, your shares, so more people can discover horror and thriller and the love of reading just like you have. So help a girl out, pay it forward, and now back to our regular scheduled content. Okay, so you write this, is it the Wilderwood? The Wilderwood,
yes, the Wilderwood
duology, correct? Which is, for the wolf and then for the throne. And I heard you describe it as more of a melting of many fairy tales versus a true retelling of Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
And so what made you want to do that? Like the melting versus a true retelling?
I think it's because I'm so fascinated by fairy tales, and specifically the way that you can have fairy tales that mirror each other that come from a bunch of different cultures. So it's like, obviously, we were all kind of dealing with similar ways of trying to rationalize things, and the way that we tell stories about things that happen. I've always thought that was really, really cool. And so I wanted to write something that felt like a fairy tale and that had kind of threads of a bunch of different ones that felt like maybe this was the real thing that happened, and all the fairy tales that we heard kind of came from the retelling and retelling and retelling of this one story. Yeah, that was kind of what I was going for.
Yeah, no. And then, of course, because it has that fairy tale vibe, you expect the whimsy and the kind of like romantic atmosphere. But then you have, like you mentioned, these very dark horror adjacent moments, even in For the Wolf, that are not, well, to be fair, they are kind of fairy tale-ish, but not more in the traditional sense of what fairy tales used to be versus what they are now. How did you balance the whimsy with the horror?
Ooh. See, I feel like I didn't do a very good job of being very whimsical, so that's nice to hear. I feel like if I have any whimsy, most of it just comes from all of my characters being like sarcastic assholes at their core. And that is mostly because my like foundational piece of media was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Girl.
So, yes. Like
we could do a whole hour on Buffy herself.
And I would. That is like in the bedrock of my soul.
Same.
It's Buffy all the way down. And that comes out. And I think that it's kind of like a similar vibe of like, okay, it's mostly horror, but there's also like a little bit of whimsy sprinkled in there with just like, here's a stupid joke, or here's like something that is horror-y, but we've kind of turned it on its head and made it funny instead.
Yes.
And that's kind of, that's the brand of whimsy I like to play with.
Okay. That's my favorite brand, so it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that for those millennials of us, that there is a generation of Buffy-inspired women who probably all really love to read and have a deep obsession with vampires that we don't talk about as often.
No.
Because we don't want to, because we have kids now and we're grown-ups. But, you know, there is that show was also incredibly transformational for me.
Yes.
I think it was one of the first times where you saw a female character who was not always perfect, doing her best and trying to take care of the people she loved and like really kicking ass most of the time.
And but also like really fucking up a couple times.
Yeah. And like falling to the whims of a boy who happened to also be a vampire. Like those ideas of like,
among us.
I mean, she was like imperfectly relatable all the time. It was like, oh, I have to kill vampires who can kill everybody on the planet, but I also have to go to high school biology.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I hate biology. I mean, that was just like, so I don't remember there being a show that kind of played on those, like, two elements of,
and did it consistently.
It was so good.
Yeah,
so good.
I feel like a lot of shows that have kind of come in the wake of Buffy that are trying to do similar things. It's like by about season 3, we completely forget that everybody's supposed to be in high school. And it's like, these people are 32.
Yes, 100%. Actually, most high school shows feel that way. You're like, you are not a high schooler. Because I was a high schooler and you're way too cool to be a high schooler.
There's something is afoot.
So that's really interesting. I feel like this Buffy does this really well too. So maybe this was inspirational for you, but there's this reoccurring question in this duology, and in a lot of your books about whether something that's monstrous is inherently evil or not.
Yeah.
And this idea of playing on what real evil is and kind of the shades of humanity, even in your monsters. This is a theme. Is this like a theme you consciously explore, or is it just like so ingrained in you that it comes out without trying?
So ingrained, probably, because I didn't necessarily realize that's what I was doing with Wolf and Throne. Like, I didn't realize that I was, so those books, those are like the depression duology. Like, that's like what I was kind of dealing with at the time. They're very much about grief and anxiety and feeling trapped in situations that you see no easy way out of. But they are also like religious trauma books in a less direct way than the Nightshade Crown trilogy is, because by that time I'd sat down at the computer, was like, it is time to write about religious trauma. But
we're going to get to
books.
That.
Those books like had that in there. And it is something that I find myself just kind of constantly circling around, is this question of, how we use story to inform worldview, and how much can you trust that what you've been told is the truth is actually the truth without looking at the motivations of who told it to you. And how those things are used to shape the morals of a culture in a way that is advantageous to a few.
Yeah.
And, like, looking at the world in which we find ourselves, it's not, I guess, shocking that that's something that is often on my mind. But I find myself circling around that with pretty much everything at like varying degrees.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Also, you're dealing with female characters who are powerful, but believe their power is tied to expectation or sacrifice often. And there's like fear in their power versus kind of standing in their power. So there's also this real strong, when we talk about religious trauma, which I also have, so twins, we often talk about this kind of submission of women and the removal of feminine power, because religion often does that, right? It minimalizes us. It labels us as good for a couple things and not for other things. So you're often having conversations around femininity and power. Is that important because of your own background? Is that where those kind of conversations come from?
Yes, in part, and some of it is just me kind of like writing what I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
And, I'm a cis female, so I like think about that stuff a lot and try to kind of rationalize it, I guess. And just, I am one of those people that's just like having endless conversations in my head about like, what do I think about this? What if you look at it this way and stuff like that? And so writing is, especially Nightshade Crown, was kind of a platform for me to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And kind of write them out and think about them. And so I guess a lot of it is like, write what you know, and that's what I know.
Yeah. Well, I loved it. So thank you.
Thank
you.
Keep
doing that. Speaking of Nightshade Crown, so I would say, so I've, experienced all of your books now. And obviously was lucky enough to read your horror, which we're going to talk about as well. And it seems like you progressively get darker with every so the Nightshade Crown, or the Foxglove, which it starts with the Foxglove King, it is definitely darker than your duology, and it also becomes it hinges more on kind of religious power and political power. So going into that, talk me through the evolution of writing that series or starting that trilogy coming off of the duology.
So whenever I pitched Foxglove King, I had just finished the first draft of For the Throne. I'd also just finished the first draft of Reliquary because I wrote that one in between Wolf and Throne.
My goodness.
And it was it's been a minute. It was just kind of sitting on my hard drive. It was just a fun little side project for a while. We can get to that. But I think every writer that I've spoken to, especially whenever your first book is a series, you are kind of afraid that maybe that's the only thing you can do. So my series, the Wilderwood duology, had been a very limited cast. It was very woodsy, atmospheric, very just not small stakes, but you wrote things the stakes were big, but you were able to write them in a more intimate way. So I was okay, so for this one, I'm going to pitch big ensemble cast in a royal court. We're going to be doing big things with gods, right from the jump. We're going to really have an expanded world where there's a map and we know where things are and we know the trade routes and what's going on over here and stuff like that, which wasn't necessarily something I'd had to deal with in Wilderwood just because it was so kind of centralized. So a lot of it was just me deciding I was going to do the opposite of all the things that I had done in Wilderwood to see if I could, which, is a risky thing to do. Whatever you're telling your publisher, yes, obviously I could do this and you should give me money for it. But it turned out fine.
It did.
Yeah. And I knew I was more confident as a writer at that point, as far as feeling like I could take the things in my brain that I wanted to say and say them in a story. I knew that I was ready to talk about religious trauma in no uncertain terms. And I knew that I wanted to take it darker than Wilderwood. Because Wilderwood was pretty dark, but I felt like I had an opportunity now to kind of go a little bit further with it. So I did, and I had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. You also revved up the romance,
yes,
in a very different way. There was a sense of, well, I guess I'm curious. Did you know from the beginning that you wanted all this love triangle, the three love triangle characters, to all be into each other? Versus usually you have just one character and the two outside characters are into them, but then they were also into each other, and you're like, what is happening?
Yes.
So
it makes
whenever I
wrote the very first draft, I didn't know that. But whenever I was reading through the first draft of the Foxglove King, and I was like, why do Bastion and Gabe keep flirting? And so I sat with it for a minute and was like, okay, so there are two directions I can take this in, and it's either the one that I had originally planned, or we can lean into this energy and see what comes out. And the tension there, I just enjoyed it so much. So I was like, I feel like it would be a waste to not at least see if I could make that one work. So I did.
And you did. And now it's got a white shoes.
Now it's got a white shoes. No one has to choose. Everybody gets a little something.
That's so true. One of the most interesting things about Lore, the protagonist, is that they survive, or she survives, by reading people, by adapting and becoming what other people need her to be. What drew you to writing a female protagonist whose greatest weapon was performance? Because I just think that's really interesting.
Well, in a shocking
it's relatable.
I am a theater kid, or I was, which I know. So shocking. No one could ever have seen that one coming.
Nope. Out of left field.
So never. But yeah, so I feel like that was kind of part of it.
Yeah.
And some of it was also just wanting to make her very different from Red and Neve. Red and Neve in the Wilderwood duology were both very confident in nothing else other than they knew who they were, even if they didn't like it. And they were very much not people to kind of pander to what the people around them wanted. So I decided that Lore would. And it would be something where it was just a survival tactic. It was making her like she was of the mind like, hey, my life was hard enough and there's no reason for me to make it harder. And so we're gonna go along to get along. And that's fine and cool. And we're looking out for number one. And that changes over the course of the trilogy somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just kind of wanting to write a different kind of protagonist and wanting to like stretch myself and see what else could happen.
Yeah. I do think the series are very different in I mean, they have a similar kind of very lush like atmosphere where like, the woods itself in your duology is almost its character, and you have these very kind of visceral, like, ooh, the smells and touches and feels. Like, that's so fun. It's very gothic leaning, which is
that's like fun for me to write.
My
so like
favorite.
That's just gonna be around in everything that I write because I have a good time doing it.
100%. And that's, I mean, Reliquary, you could not get away from the atmosphere if you tried. Like, it was seeded in from page one before you knew where, Claire was going to end up, because it was so, like some of your word choices. I don't want to give anything away. I want to, but I can't, because that's bad. But yeah, so the atmosphere that you can tell it's written by the same person, but then the character dynamics, in the duology, you're dealing with sisters, even though you do have this romance element as well, of course, very strong. And then, in the trilogy, you've got this kind of like standalone heroine who's like trying to just like, protect herself, and take down, bad guys and
the
gods
stuff.
And all the stuff. But there's still kind of a romantasy element in both of them. And I think one of the things about romantasy that is really interesting is that I think fantasy often deals and explores power, but romantasy explores it through like intimacy,
like
versus like like a soft power, or like in like a emotional in relationships, the dynamics of that. Do you think that's one of the reasons why it resonates with people, and women specifically, like so deeply?
So I think it's like, I don't know. It's like, for me, I can't really get much out of a story if I'm not really into the characters, and I don't get much out of a romance if I'm not really into the characters. So doing that really like deep point of view where you do look at things from more of a soft power perspective, and just like noting how that comes together with like more traditional kinds of powers that you'd find in fantasy, like magic powers or military power or whatever. What I find interesting is like the intersection of those two, and how one informs the other, and how there's like friction between them. And that is something that I think that Romantasy does a really good job of kind of introducing both of those elements, and not like in isolation, but seeing like, because in real life you have to deal with both of those things. You're gonna have like soft power often does more than, I feel weird saying hard power, but I don't really know. But like, those things are always going to be something that has to be dealt with together. And I feel like seeing that reflected in fiction is easy for everybody to connect to and kind of get more out of.
Okay, so you've done basically kind of like dark fantasy and romantasy, and obviously you love that and your heart is there. And then you decide, I'm going to write a horror novel. And we have Reliquary, which is your first adult horror novel. It's coming this summer, but you wrote it many moons ago, it sounds like.
So Wolf had come out. I had written the very first draft of For the Throne and sent it to my editor. And I knew that it was a mess, so I was kind of like anxious about waiting for her notes back. And I watched Ready or Not. And really enjoyed it. It's like, this might be one of my new favorite movies. I've had a great time. But I was like, why did they not lean into the sexual tension between Samara Weaving and the Adam Brody character, like the brother? It's like, I feel like that was a missed opportunity. That would have been one of my notes personally, right, were I looking over the script. And so that was just kind of like a random one-off thought that I had, but it like planted itself in the back of my brain, and I kept thinking about it, and I was like, well, you could do something with that, like something that's kind of a similar premise, but bring forth kind of that brother thread. And I've always been really afraid of the ocean. Nothing in there is any of my business. So it's like you put some oceany stuff in there, and let's just kind of stir it up and see what comes out. And again, because I had just done very like folkloric, atmospheric fantasy, I was like, can I write in a contemporary voice? Is that something that I can do? I would like to try.
Yes.
So it was kind of like an experiment for me in that way too. Just to stretch myself to see what else I could do. Yeah, so I had drafted it. It was a really skinny draft, but I think my first draft was like 55,000 words. Like it was barely a novella.
Wow.
So, and I wrote it and I had it like on my computer, and I didn't tell anybody that I was writing it because it was just kind of an experiment. And for me to have fun. We keep coming back to that. And I sent it to Erin, and Erin liked it. And then I ended up sending it to my agent. I had not told her that I was working on this. I just kind of sent her the draft that was like, oh, hey, by the way, I wrote a horror novel.
I did a thing.
And she was like,
yeah,
okay. And so we didn't really work on it right then, just because we had other stuff to be working on, and we had just sold Nightshade Crown Trilogy, so that was like priority. But we did, whenever I was in between drafts of Nightshade Crown, we would send Reliquary back and forth, and she would write me an edit letter, and I would go in and I would just kind of like work on it when I had downtime, like like after I had just turned something in. And so it was kind of like a piecemeal project over like 4 years, I guess, 3 years, 4 years, something like that. Yeah, and so by the time pitching time rolled around again, whenever Nightshade Crown was coming to a close, I was like, well, we have this one that's like done. Like it's a full written draft. It's not even a pitch. It's just like, I can send you the entire book right now. So we did. We didn't know if they would go for a horror from me or not, but they did, thankfully. And
they did.
Here we are. And it was actually really nice for me because it gave me a year where I didn't have to draft something because I was really burnt out.
I can imagine.
Worked out nice.
Yeah, because you did quite a lot of books now. This will be your 6th.
Yeah.
Since 2021.
Yeah.
With the release. And that's, the idea is like, oh, it's been like 6 years, let's say, because it came out in 2021, so it was probably finished in 2020. So, but that's more than just one book a year because of the rate at which you write, and then by the time it comes out, and then you revise, and then you're writing something else when the new one comes out, and then you're thinking about the process of publishing is foreign to a lot of people, but it's like a very weird time structure. So you have been working your little tush off.
So like, I'm
basically
working
constantly.
I'm working on my second horror, like drafting my second horror right now, and it won't come out until I think 29. But I'm writing it out.
Yeah, because that's how it goes. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm waiting on notes from another draft I turned in.
Oh my gosh, so good. Well, I was going to ask what's coming next, but I still will, so you can give us.
Yes.
But so without spoilers, obviously, for Reliquary, tell us, because we've talked about our 2 protagonists that we've had from you so far. Tell us, as Claire is very different, as a protagonist for you. What were you kind of going for with Claire? That was like new and challenged you?
Wanted writing. Claire is probably the most challenging protagonist that I've written, as far as like feeling like I understood her well enough to write things in a way that her character would come across. I wanted reading in Claire's voice to kind of feel like you were teetering on the edge of a panic attack the entire time. So whenever I wrote the first draft, whenever I was editing it with my editor, and not just my agent, but one of her notes, which is a note that I get often, was that she wasn't active enough in the narrative. She needed to be doing more. And, usually, especially in fantasy, that's a good note. Like, your protagonist in fantasy, they do have to be, like, driving forces.
Sure,
And so I was used to that note. I'd been kind of expecting it, and I sat with it for a little bit, trying to like kind of think of ways to do that. And I could just never come up with something that still felt true to the character while taking that note. And so I emailed my editor back and I was like, hey, I hear you on this one, but I feel like because of who Claire is, because of the way that she's reacted to her trauma and the years that she has spent just kind of pushing things down. She is not someone that is necessarily going to be a driving force. She is that character in the horror movie that dies first. Like, she's Drew Barrymore at the beginning of Scream. She is going down into that basement. And, the narrative is just that she somehow manages to get out of that eventually.
Yeah.
But, so the challenge then became writing her in such a way that even though her surface level, she can come across as kind of flat and disconnected, that is on purpose. That is how she has chosen to deal with the world, because the world is too much. She doesn't want to rock the boat because rocking the boat literally or metaphorically has not worked out for her well in the past.
Yes.
And so, she is just kind of like drifting. And I knew that would be kind of a sticking point for readers, where they either really get that feeling or they really, really don't. And so I just kind of had to be cool with that and do it the way I wanted to do it, in the way that felt the most true to the character and to the kind of story that I was trying to tell, without worrying about that too much. But it took me a while to figure her out, but I like the way it ended up.
Yeah, it's like a real a slow burn, which I love. But I mean, I feel like there's slow burn elements in For the Wolf as well. I mean, where we are relying on this kind of building dread, and it's like
I'll be so honest. I feel like everything that I write is a slow burn. I don't know how to do it any other way.
I mean, and I think there are people who won't vibe with that, but the anticipation of what is actually going to happen. I would say that this book felt like, a bottle of Coke, and if you you were just like slowly shaking it, and it was like bubbling, and then as you got to like the 60%, it was like the shaking became more violent, and then by the time we get to the end, the cap is fully blown off, and here we are, and like you can't read it fast enough to figure out if everyone's going to get their just dues. So that is like a different kind of horror. And it's nice to hear that it was like intentionally written that way, because it feels like that.
Yay, I'm glad.
Where you're really like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to settle into the dread of this. And it feels like living in anxiety and dread until you get to the climax. And that is not for everybody. But I love it.
Thank you.
I was a big fan.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
I do too. I can only read so much of it before like I'm like, wow, why am I like all twitchy and anxious? And it's like, oh, because I have read like 15 of these books in, a 2-week time span.
Right.
But I wanted there was a lot of things in it where I was really taking experience from the own way that I have like anxiety and ADHD and like OCD, all that fun stuff.
Sure.
And like the ways that it felt in my brain. Like there was one line that I had to kind of keep from getting cut a couple times. People were like, I don't really understand like what this means, but she says something about how she has a thought, but it feels like a theater marquee that she is thinking it at the front of her brain to hide everything else behind it. And they're like, I don't really get what that means. And I was like, that is exactly what happens in my brain. You have an intrusive thought and you try to think something else really, really loud in front of it. So just like little things like that I could put in, that just felt, it was a way to put words to things that I have always felt with all that. And, hopefully, give other people words to describe it too, if it's something that they experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Claire definitely, you're putting like the mental illness and what she's dealing with her anxiety and her kind of depression, which is totally understandable from her history. In a contemporary novel, it's like right at the forefront, right? It's not hiding behind anything like you might have in fantasy.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to like make it
people.
sound super flowery, and it's like you can't talk about your thoughts bopping around like a DVD menu in like a fantasy book.
You can't,
and it's hard to come up with. A similar thing. Yeah. That's pretty singular. So.
Yes, 100%. So do you feel like this is going to be a like new era of writing for you? So it sounds like you're working on another horror.
I am working on another horror, and I have my fantasy. The next fantasy that I have coming out is a contemporary fantasy. Yeah,
fun.
so there's still some like back and forth with what the exact schedule is going to be, but I think that my book that is coming out next year, it's called Hawthorne and Oak, and it is the first in a contemporary fantasy duology that is about fairies, but like scary fairies.
Ooh. Oh yes, perfect.
So
Good.
it's like horror and fantasy with some romance. So that'll be like the duology. I do have like a secondary world romantasy also scheduled, I think, for 29. Yeah, so I plan to keep kind of doing all of it. Yeah.
Good.
I have a good time with all of it.
Yeah, we're going to keep getting the Hannah dark atmospheric fantasy romantasy vibes because that is what we want. So and you can go, girl, as dark as you want. You have my permission. You don't need anybody else's.
I have some weird ideas that are
good
on the cooker. So
good. I need some dark. I was looking for like horror fantasy specifically, and I was like Googling it, and I was like trying to read some articles, and I was like, there's just not enough horror fantasy out there that does, because, fantasy publishers want to sell fantasy to romantasy readers or to, like hard magic readers, or you have the old man fantasy category, but like
it's like we were talking about before where there's like so much crossover. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, so when does dark fantasy become like horror fantasy?
100%.
Like there's not really a line of demarcation there. It's just kind of like, I don't know, whenever the vibes align.
Right. But like, give me a girl crawling out of a TV in a fantasy book. I'll take it. Like, mix those genres. Maybe not a TV. Maybe like a cauldron. But I mean, I'm just saying, I'm down for the ghouls and the haunted characters in a fantasy setting. Like, yes. Yeah. All the necromancy, please.
Yes.
But that's just me. Actually, I know that's not just me because a lot of people who listen to this show also would.
The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling?
Yeah, I have not, but I love her, and it's sitting on my shelf.
And
I'm going to meet her this weekend.
Exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, perfect.
Yes,
good.
I think you will have a very good time.
Oh, awesome. I love that. I did see a side note, and then we'll do our final thing and let you go. But you have Coffin Moon sitting on the shelf behind you.
I do.
Have you read it yet?
I have. This is. I have shelves all over my house that are like I have unread shelves, and then I have read shelves, and so these are all read shelves.
Okay,
that
I just finished that one
sitting amongst,
and I just loved it. So I saw it and was like, yay, so good.
It was so good.
Keith.
I loved
Keith. You're so good.
Keith, man, he got me right in the feels on that one,
dude. Oh, me too. I was like, oh, great. It's gonna. Yeah. I was like looking for like scary vampires, which there were, but also like,
it's like wow. I wasn't ready to have like parenthood feels.
I know that ending.
I wasn't prepared.
Like, okay. I wasn't prepared. He's coming on the show in a couple months, and I'm gonna ask him.
Yay!
I said when I did my review and posted it online, I was like, I'm waiting for an apology. Yeah. So when you're ready for that,
the bill's in your mail, Keith.
For my therapy.
It's on the way.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I always like to end these kind of like on a funny high note.
Yeah.
Not that this wasn't all fun and high, but so we're gonna play this 1 minute game. Really simple. Don't worry, it has no math involved. It's called Dark Fantasy This or That. I feel like you're gonna crush this. Okay.
Okay.
I also feel like when I say dark fantasy this or that, I need some theme music. So Emily, that's my editor. I probably do need some theme music. If you could hook a girl up. You ready?
I'm ready.
Just first thing that comes to your head when I say these things. Ancient cursed forest or haunted castle?
Cursed forest.
I knew that. I don't even know why I asked that one. Necromancy or forbidden prophecy?
Necromancy.
Okay. Morally gray love interest or morally gray protagonist?
Morally gray protagonist.
Yeah. Blood magic or shadow magic?
Shadow magic.
Happy ending or devastating ending?
Oh, devastating.
I love it. Okay. One perfect standalone or a sprawling 5-book series?
I like one perfect standalone.
Me too.
Personally,
I just love it. Yeah. Okay. Epic villain monologue or epic betrayal reveal?
Oh, betrayal reveal. 100%. I love a betrayal.
I know. Who doesn't? Gothic cathedral or underground crypt?
Underground crypt.
Slow burn romance or enemies to lovers?
Slow burn.
Yes. And finally, creature feature or psychological horror?
Ooh, psychological horror.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love a creature feature when done really, really well. This is Reliquary is like technically a creature feature, so I'm like, I don't even like do creature feature movies, so why it occurred to me to do a creature feature book, I don't know. It happened to all of us. But yeah, I do love a really good creature feature, but I love watching or reading something that just makes you be like, the fuck was that?
Yeah, 100%.
That's the feeling I'm chasing.
That's perfect. So it sounds like you need to pitch a cursed forest, necromancy, morally gray protagonist, shadow magic, devastating ending, one perfect standalone, betrayal reveal, in an underground crypt with a slow burn romance and a psychological horror next.
Yes. I will.
If you
all
can
of those, I will put them all in the brain soup, and we will see what emerges.
Perfect. You did it. Well done.
Yay!
That was it. You've completed the game. Our one silly, quirky game that we like to do. It's great for the Instagram reels, to be fair. We always
I'm sure. Yeah.
Play with the authors a little and give a little time for you to show your personality, which you did super, super well. Thank you so much for being here. Hannah, this was a joy. It's been amazing picking your brain and getting to like hear the inspiration behind some of these amazing books. And I'm just like really excited for everybody to read Reliquary because it's so good.
Thank you. I hope everybody liked it.
Loved it. Everyone is going to like it. And if you don't like it, don't say anything. That's your choice.
Just don't tag me in it,
say anything.
And you can say whatever you want.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 100%. If you tag an author in a book review, blocked. And I mean, a bad book review, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, so just thank you again. This has been a blast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And make sure to pre-order Reliquary, out everywhere August 11th. It's a wonderful horror debut, and I promise you are not going to want to miss it. As always, to the brave souls that listen to this show, thank you so much. I know your time is precious, and we are so glad you came, sat with us, and talked some horror. Until next week, we'll see you, same time, same place.